In October 2008, the quiet halls of a prestigious Chicago architectural firm were shattered by a shocking crime. Rebecca Stone, a talented architect, was found dead in her own office. But this was no ordinary murder. She had been carefully positioned, surrounded by her own architectural drawings, as if she were part of a macabre art installation. The specific blueprint seemed deliberately placed, a signature left by a killer with a deeply personal message. The police immediately focused on her ex-husband, Mark Stone. Their divorce 6 months earlier had been bitter, filled with custody battles and financial disputes. He had the motive, he had the opportunity, and despite a lack of solid physical evidence, the circumstantial case was strong. Mark was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, his pleas of innocence fading into the silence of his cell. For 10 years, the case was closed. But then, in 2018, in Indianapolis, 3 hours away from Chicago, another body was found. The victim, Katherine Wells, was also an architect, and the crime scene was eerily familiar. She was positioned exactly like Rebecca Stone, surrounded by her own drawings in the same precise arrangement. The signature was identical in every single detail. There was just one problem. Mark Stone had been in a maximum security prison for a decade. He couldn't have done this. At first, no one connected the two cases. Different cities, different investigators, 10 years apart. But a veteran homicide detective in Chicago, Linda Martinez, read about the Indianapolis murder and felt a chill run down her spine. She pulled the old Rebecca Stone case file, comparing the crime scene photos. The similarities were uncanny. It wasn't just a copycat, it was a carbon copy. Either Mark Stone was innocent, or someone was playing a very twisted game. Martinez picked up the phone and called Detective James Park in Indianapolis. Their joint investigation quickly uncovered a crucial link. Both Rebecca and Katherine had worked for the same architectural firm, Harrison and Associates, though in different offices and a decade apart. Both were talented women in their late 30s who specialized in commercial building design. The real connection wasn't an ex-husband, it was the firm itself. Suddenly, Mark Stone's conviction didn't just look questionable, it looked impossible. Reviewing Mark's original trial, the cracks began to show. The prosecution's case had been built on angry emails and the lack of an alibi. They argued that the unique arrangement of the blueprints showed an intimate knowledge of Rebecca's work, something only a spouse would possess. But now, with the same signature appearing 10 years later, that argument completely fell apart. The chilling reality began to sink in. An innocent man may have spent a decade behind bars. Martinez and Park assembled a joint task force, bringing in FBI signature analysis experts. The specialists confirmed their suspicions. The crime scenes weren't just similar, they were identical. The placement of the drawings, the orientation of the bodies, this wasn't imitation. This was the same killer, compulsively repeating his exact ritualistic method. The person who killed Katherine Wells in 2018 almost certainly killed Rebecca Stone in 2008. The investigation now zeroed in on Harrison and Associates. Who had access to both offices? Who knew both women? Who understood architecture well enough to use it as a murder signature? They combed through employee records, creating a list of people who worked at both the Chicago and Indianapolis offices during the relevant time periods. One name stood out: Gerald Price, a senior partner who managed both branches. On the surface, Gerald Price was the last person anyone would suspect. At 62, he was a founding partner of the firm, a highly respected architect, and a pillar of the community. He won awards, served on boards, and mentored young professionals. But as detectives dug deeper, they unearthed a disturbing pattern of financial irregularities. Money was moving between accounts, projects had inflated budgets, and invoices didn't match deliveries. It looked like systematic embezzlement, with millions of dollars being slowly siphoned from the firm over many years. Speaking confidentially with former employees, a darker picture of Price emerged. They learned that Rebecca Stone had discovered financial discrepancies back in 2008. She had questioned expense reports and was scheduled to meet with the board of directors the week after she died. That meeting never happened. A decade later, Katherine Wells had been conducting an internal audit and found the same issues. She too had mentioned reporting her findings. Both women were silenced just days before they could expose the truth. Forensic accountants traced the money trail directly to Gerald Price. For over 15 years, he had been stealing from his own company, creating fake vendor accounts and inflating project costs to fund a secret gambling addiction and a lavish lifestyle. He had stolen approximately $4.3 million. Rebecca and Katherine had both stumbled upon his web of deceit, and for that, they paid with their lives. But why repeat the exact same signature? Forensic psychologists explained that signature killers are driven by compulsion. The architectural drawings were both symbolic and practical for Price. They represented his life's work, the very thing he was killing to protect. Arranging them around his victims was an act of reclaiming power. When Katherine found the same evidence 10 years later, he instinctively returned to the same ritual that had given him a sense of control before. A chilling thought occurred to the detectives. If Price was this compulsive, were there other victims? They searched for unsolved murders involving professionals found with documents arranged around them. They found one. A 2003 case in Denver, where an accountant was found dead surrounded by ledgers and spreadsheets. At the time, Gerald Price was consulting for a Denver firm. The horrifying truth was that he had been killing to protect his secret for at least 15 years. With surveillance on Price, detectives built an airtight case. They knew a man of his prominence would have an army of lawyers. They found that after Katherine's murder, Price had resumed his embezzlement, arrogant in his belief that he had gotten away with it again. A warrant for his computer revealed damning searches for Mark Stone's trial and news about both murders. He was monitoring his own crimes, a digital footprint that pointed directly to his guilt. Detectives arrested Price in his office, surrounded by the blueprints and models that symbolized his success. He was calm when confronted with the embezzlement, but when they mentioned Rebecca Stone and Katherine Wells, his composure cracked. The trophy collection found in his basement, folders on all three victims, copied blueprints, photos, sealed his fate. It was proof of a calculated killer who believed he was smarter than everyone. At trial, prosecutors presented the overwhelming evidence: the financial motive, the trophy collection, and the identical signatures. The defense's claims of coincidence crumbled against the irrefutable proof. Gerald Price was convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. He never showed remorse, a calculating criminal hiding behind a mask of respectability. After 10 long years, Mark Stone walked out of prison a free man. He had lost a decade with his daughter, his career, and his reputation. Detective Martinez apologized, but Mark held no blame for her. The real killer, he said, was just too smart, too respected, and too protected by his status. The case closed with one man attempting to rebuild a shattered life, and another spending the rest of his in the prison cell that was never meant for Mark. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as compelling as we did, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into complex cases.